Hey everyone, I'm back. This is the last video for this week. Hopefully it will be uploaded soon. But yeah, week 2, part 6, we're gonna do the workbook again. I think this week this lesson we will focus on, I know. This lesson we will focus on grammar because I think it is important to get extra grammar practice, and since we're doing it this way, you will get to practice speaking. Even if I can't hear you, I hope every time I read out loud, you are reading out loud too, either reading with me or repeating after me. So hopefully that will be extra good practice for you. But here we go. We're on page 68. The first section, you will match the sentence parts and then write the sentences. So number 1 has already been done for us. So let's see how this works. You remember when we talked about although and even though? So when you have although, that means the two parts of the sentence will be contrasting. And it means that one part of the sentence will be surprising because of the information in the other part of the sentence. Okay? So number 1, although sending email is fast, and then it says D. So zoom on over to part D in the other column. And it says, I think sending a letter is friendlier. So more friendly. So then you see at the bottom, underneath it, it has number 1. And then they wrote out the sentence. Although sending email is fast, I think sending a letter is friendlier. Does that make sense? So we're connecting the two parts of the sentence in the top half, and then in the bottom half you will write the sentence out. So let's do one together. Number 2, even though I have a cell phone, okay. So in the column on the right, let's look for a clause that has to do with cell phones or something about cell phones. So I don't own a car. No, that's not it. I prefer old cameras. No. What about letter C? I don't make many calls with it. Let's read that and see if that makes sense as a sentence. So number 2, even though I have a cell phone, and then letter C, I don't make many calls with it. I think we have a winner. Let's write that on the board, shall we? And you write it on number 2. Number 2. Even though I have a cell phone, I don't make many calls with it. That sounds like my grandfather. We got a cell phone for my grandparents, and the only thing they know to do is look at the pictures, because we upload pictures to a shared photo album. So my grandparents look at pictures of their great-grandchildren all day long, but they do not know how to call on the cell phone. They do not know how to text on the cell phone. They do not know how to use Facebook, or they know how to answer a FaceTime call, but they don't know how to do anything else. So maybe you know someone like that. Okay, let's keep going. Number 3, Although I sometimes use a microwave. All right, let's look again. A says something about car. B says something about cameras. No. And it's not C, because we already used that. And it's not D, because we already used that. E says something about food. And F says something about temperature. So microwave, it's probably about food. So what does letter E say? I think the food doesn't taste good. Let's try reading it all together as one sentence. So number 3, although I sometimes use a microwave, letter E, I think the food doesn't taste good. That sounds right to me. Let's write it on number 3. Although I sometimes use a microwave, the next part says, I think the food doesn't taste good. Okay. So number 4, even though I have a driver's license, all right, so we're looking for something that has to do with driver's license. Letter A says, I don't own a car. Does that sound right? It's probably not letter B, and it's probably not letter F. So I think it's letter A. And I will let you write that in your book. So let's read it all together. It says, even though I have a driver's license, I don't own a car. Okay? So write that down below on number 4 and pause the video if you need to. Okay, number 5. Although digital cameras are innovative, let's see. So we only have B or F to choose from. So it's probably the one about cameras, right? What does letter B say? I prefer old cameras. So let's read that sentence all together. Although digital cameras are innovative, I prefer old cameras. That sounds good, right? Okay. Number 6. Even though I don't have air conditioning, and now, you know, we only have one option left. It says the temperature in my house is comfortable. So that is surprising because usually if you don't have air conditioning, the temperature in your house is not comfortable. But this person says, even though I don't have air conditioning, the temperature in my house is comfortable. Okay? Great. Let's move on and do part 2. The instructions say read the survey and then write sentences about what David prefers with although or even though. So it's funny because I have a cousin named David King. So we will pretend this is my cousin's survey. So it says his name is David King, and then he is to mark an X for sometimes and a check mark for usually. So number 1, how do you write to friends? Emails or letters? So there's an X by emails, so that means David King sometimes writes with emails, but usually writes with letters. There's a check mark by letters, so that means usually he writes with letters. Okay, how do you wash? Oh, sorry, pause. So then you go to number 1 below and you write that sentence. using although. So it says, sometimes he writes with emails and usually he writes with letters. So the sentence says, although David sometimes writes emails, he prefers to write letters. Okay, does that make sense? Let's do the next one together. All right. So number 2, how do you wash your dishes? There's a check mark next to by hand and then an X by the dishwasher. So usually David washes his dishes by hand and sometimes he washes them with a dishwasher. So look at number 2 below and it says even though out to the side. So the sentence will say something like, maybe it could say, even though David usually washes his dishes by hand, comma, sometimes he uses the dishwasher. Yeah? Okay, so that's number 2. Let's do number 3 together and then I'll let you guys do number 4 and 5 by yourselves. Okay, number 3, how do you get the news? David King says sometimes from TV, usually from the radio. Okay, so what would that sentence be? Although David sometimes gets his news from TV, he usually gets it from the radio. Okay. Let's try that up here. Although David sometimes gets his news from the TV, he usually prefers to get it from the radio. Okay? Very good. Now, go ahead and pause the video here and complete numbers 4 and 5 by yourself. Okay? Now that you have finished that, let's go on to number 3 on page 69. Combine the sentences. Use the words in parentheses. Okay, so number 1 says, Nora has a new cell phone. She likes her old cell phone better. And then in parentheses, it says, even though. Okay. So then the answer of the combined, how you would combine those sentences, they already wrote it for us. It says, even though Nora has a new cell phone, she likes her old cell phone better. Okay? Does that make sense? Number 2, I used my GPS. I still couldn't find the way to your house. And then in parentheses it says although. So how could we combine these two sentences? Maybe we could say, although I used my GPS, I still couldn't find the way to your house. Does that work? I think it does. Okay. Let's write it up here. Number 2. Although I used my GPS, I still couldn't find the way to your house. All right. Be honest. How many of you have to use GPS or use your Google Maps or whatever anytime you go anywhere? I try really hard to not use my maps, but it's hard because it's so convenient to just use maps. It tells you where to go. Okay. Number 3. Let's do number 3 together, and then I'll let you do the rest by yourself. Number 3. Omar works in an office. He doesn't like to use computers. All right, how would you combine those? All right, maybe we could say, although Omar works in an office, he doesn't like to use computers. How does that sound? Okay. I'm not going to write that on the board, but I will let you guys write that down, and then you can do the rest of them, the next 4 by yourselves. And finally, I'll do one more with you from number 4. So it says, rewrite the sentences, put the second part of the sentence first. Okay, so number 1 says, I usually cook on the stove even though I have a microwave. So put the second part of the sentence first. So look at what they did. They switched it and it said, even though I have a microwave, I usually cook on the stove. Isn't that cool? You can say the same thing both ways. All right, let's try number 2. It says, although I put in new batteries, my camera doesn't work. So now take the second half, move it to the front. So it would say, my camera doesn't work, although I put in new batteries. Ta-da! Easy peasy. Okay, I think you guys get the idea. Go ahead and do the rest of all of that. So complete pages 68 and 69. Of course, as always, if you have any questions, please let me know. Send me a direct message on WhatsApp, or send me a text message, or give me a phone call, or send me an email. Yeah, I'm available to help you anytime. And I hope you all are doing well, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.